Hey, I'm Rachel,
And I'm Amanda, and this is Beyond a Ballot.
powered by DoorDash. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Beyond a Ballot. Hi, Amanda.
Hi, Rachel.
Okay, well, big week this week in Ottawa. I don't know about you, but as a commentator, anything economic stresses me out so much because I have no background in finance or like numbers. I would have been a doctor if I was good with numbers, but there's 2 times a year where I get the most stressed. One, budget day, and two, when it used to be the fall economic statement, now it's the spring economic statement because they changed the timing of the budget. And so this week for me, looking at those numbers has been very stressful.
I kind of feel the same way.
Yeah.
I think, 90% of our commentary is not based on stuff like this. So when it comes around, there's an incredible amount of prep that has to go into it. And one of the more stressful things, I think, is this week I did a 4:00 panel, which was the exact moment that the Spring Economic Summit was report was being released.
No.
And so you're going in blind and you're getting information on the commercial breaks.
Oh my God. I'd be
And all you have is like these high level key messages that you get from the party in advance, but not the details. So it was incredibly stressful to try to make my way through that one.
I mean, I had hours and hours to look at it. I think I went on TV like a day after it was tabled, and I still was like, what does this mean? How does this impact Canadians? I don't even it was quite yeah. Anyways, we got through it, and I think I wanted to just talk about it, like what this means for Canada, what this means for the Carney government. Like I said, normally at this time of year we would have a budget. So this is the first time. Last year Prime Minister Carney moved the budget to be tabled now in the fall. And in the spring, we just have our halfway point, our economic update, now called the Spring Economic Update. I looked at this one and thought it's a lot of what was in the budget 6 months ago. And we typically don't always see that. We would see some more spending, some more projects and ideas. I will say it is billions more in spending that they added onto the budget they had a few months ago, but it wasn't like a grand idea like we would typically see, which kind of indicates to me they're being very cautious with the numbers. Is that what you got?
Well, I viewed it a little differently. And actually I've spent a lot of time really thinking about this one because it's very different than what we've seen. It was very different from the Trudeau approach. Those documents were much more about storytelling, and there was like a lot of human dimension in them. And this was a very numbers forward document, which isn't that surprising because this comes from a prime minister who's very concerned with the numbers. But there were things that I really liked about this. So let me tell you what I liked, and then we can talk about what you, I'm assuming, didn't like. You're right in saying that I think it's important for people to understand that the fall economic update or the spring economic update is exactly that. It's an update. So the budget is typically when you see a lot more of those big announceables. And so a lot of things have been announced already. But there were some things in this that I thought were really important. One was the billions of dollars that was being put into skilled trades.
Yes, that was big.
Why do I like this? I like this because if you are going to be a government who says it's important for us to address the affordable housing crisis, you can't just throw money at affordable housing. You have to throw money at the people who are actually going to build those houses. And so what I like about this plan is that it's thoughtful in nature. It's like we've considered the fact, it's like building a house.
Yeah.
In order to build the house, you have to have the foundation. And so he's thought, or they've thought, we're going to supercharge the affordable housing industry. If we're going to put all of those resources into it, we have to make sure that A, we can attract people into skilled trades. So we're going to top up those wages to make that a more appealing, compelling trade to get into. And secondly, we're going to make sure that there's more skilled trades so that we can build not just affordable housing, but all of the national projects, the infrastructure projects.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I liked about it. Like, is it as sexy as buck a beer and, you know, some of the trinkets that a lot of governments put in the window?
What were those?
No,
but it's nothing. Yeah.
But, you know, I think that we've been conditioned for a long time to believe that we need those trinkets. And I'm telling you this, a one-time check does not solve the affordability crisis for people.
Amen.
Doing the heavy lifting, it doesn't happen overnight. I agree. We're not going to have magical houses tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So there's a little bit of pain right now to get to a place where we're actually fixing the systemic problem. It's not as sexy, but it's more important in my view.
Yeah. I mean, I think the number one narrative that came out of the government on this update was this idea that projected deficit had been tabled with the budget in, what was it, October or November that we had the budget? And then now they are looking, because of the price of oil, because it's gone up and Canada's economy is so dependent on the price of oil, especially the province of Alberta, that now they were projecting 78 billion in deficit this year. And now they're looking at 66. It was either 66 or 63. And so the message that came out of the government was this idea that we should be celebrating that the deficit actually isn't that big. For context, this is the highest deficit that we've seen ever in Canadian history. We are still amongst our G7 allies, still have major affordability problems. Our grocery prices are still higher than anybody else. Housing is still very sparse amongst the G7 nations. And so I think for me, the biggest thing was it sounded, and you're going to tell me no, but it sounded like it was more tone deaf to some of those issues by saying, hey, we're not going to table this astronomical number. We're going to table one that's also astronomical, but a little bit less. That was my biggest criticism of this update.
Well, listen, I think if you're projecting a $78 billion deficit and you're able to get it down by $11 billion, there's something to celebrate there.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's like, I don't think that people should be shouting from the rooftops. I agree with you. I think that but I do think that we should celebrate progress, and it's progress. $11 billion less than what they expected this year. There's no doubt about it. That's better than 78 billion. So
yeah. Okay.
I also think, there's lots of ways, and this often happens on panels. It's like, how do you judge the state of the economy?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Ratio of which we're the best in the G7.
I don't even know what that means, but that's okay.
Inflation rates. And I think that the truth is that people are feeling this, and they're feeling it in Canada. They're feeling it all around the world, because this is a global issue right now.
Yeah.
It's a global crisis. Gas prices are high everywhere. Grocery prices are high everywhere. So the government, I think, is doing what it can through things like the grocery benefit, which had already been announced, and also by suspending the gas excise tax, like small things to help a little bit, and then big things to help longer term.
Yeah. And longer term, I mean, I guess the Canadian economy, we're looking at two big things. One, obviously, the negotiation on CUSMA and how that will play out is going to be critical. I don't even know how they can project a lot of these numbers without understanding where we're going with that, to be honest. And then what was the other thing I was going to say? Gas prices are just like going to shift this economy drastically. How much is a liter of gas in Toronto right now?
Oh my God. I think it was like $1.88 the other day.
I drove by this morning, $2.24 in Vancouver.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's higher than here.
Highest I've ever seen it. So like, these are really big factors that are going to impact that long-term growth. And then of course, the other part of this is resource projects. And I think it's ridiculous that people are saying, we don't have a pipeline. He's been there for a year. Like, okay. Donald Trump, though, yesterday did make, indications that perhaps there would be a pipeline, looking at a pipeline again
I saw that.
Canada to the United States, whether or not that's a new pipeline or the continuation of the XL pipeline. So I think that was a win for Carney yesterday to have that American support on board. The question is, in terms of the overall feeling of the relationship between Canada and the United States, like, how does that play into it? If he's willing to take our oil, when's he willing to get rid of our tariffs? I think it's so unstable right now that I'm not even sure any of these numbers in the spring economics update will ultimately mean anything 6 months from now.
Yeah, I mean, the volatile and unpredictable nature of the relationship with President Trump is
exhausting.
The sentence that I've said the most this year. So I think that, when we hear something like the potential for a pipeline between Canada and the US to be built, it's very promising. Mm-hmm. And I think that the instinct is to feel like it's a signal for a favorable negotiating environment.
Yeah.
And it may be, but it also may not be. And this is what is so impossible to read with President Trump. I think what I like about the Prime Minister's approach has been not because of Trump, but despite Trump. We will do things despite him. We will work around him. We will look to build relationships with other nations. We'll look to diversify our trade. We will continue to work towards the negotiations of CUSMA. But we have to sever our deep reliance on the US.
Yeah.
And I think that to have taken any other tact would have been the wrong one, even at the negotiating table. Like, at least now Canada comes from a position of more strength than utter reliance. And I think that we can share different views on what kind of job Carney's done so far. But in that respect alone, I really do think he's moved the needle.
Okay, well, let's talk about Donald Trump some more, please. And talk about everyone going to Washington this week, because we saw both Canada's King Charles and the Queen head to Washington. And we also saw some opposition members of parliament, including Jamil Jivan, who is JD Vance's very close friend, head to Washington as well. Is any of it moving the dial on anything? We still have tariffs. Yep. Okay, great.
So the last time Jamil Jivan went to Washington, stirred up all kinds of trouble, especially with your party, with the Conservative Party.
Yeah.
I thought, once again, it looks like he's kind of going rogue, breaking ranks, off to Washington, catching the leader off guard again.
What was that?
This is one, I have a lot of criticisms of Poilievre. Everyone knows that. But one of the things I've always said is an area of strength is his communication skills. I watched him in, I think it was a CBC interview or CTV interview, microphone in his face, and they say, like, what do you think about Jamil Jivan heading to Washington yet again for another trade meeting that you're not part of, Pierre Poilievre?
Right.
And he was caught off guard. He didn't know what to say. He was like, well, I have nothing to say about that right now, but we're all Team Canada. So what is happening internally? But here's what I think is interesting. So you tell me this.
Yeah.
When you have MPs leaving at the rate that Poilievre has seen, when you have that erosion, can you afford to take a hard line on any of your other members? Or do you have to kind of let them do their thing, because you can't really have that sort of conflict right now? I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think Pierre's between a rock and a hard place on that leadership question. I don't know what you do, but I think it's kind of on both of them, to be honest. Like, the fact, I'm not totally sure that Pierre had no idea that he was going this time. I think last time he did not know. But it's on Jamil to make that clear and to work with caucus. If Jamil's in a position where he's not feeling like he's being supported by caucus and that he has to go and do this, that's a big problem. And also, if Pierre can't have that conversation and really make the case to him as to why working with the Conservative caucus on these types of meetings, then that's a big problem. So I don't know what's going on there, honestly. Like, very frankly, I have no insight on how this all transpired. The interesting thing to me is that Jamil went down with other members of parliament. This wasn't a solo mission the way it was last time. And quite frankly, what I'm gathering from the whole situation with Jamil is that it's frustrating. I mean, we have a lot on the line as Canadians in terms of CUSMA negotiations, in terms of just every single day how much money these tariffs are costing businesses in Canada. And so I think Jamil probably like sat and waited for an invite from the Carney government and never got it, and like thought that he could help. And maybe there was something that came out of that that has now propelled him to go back. But he wasn't the only one in Washington trying to make inroads this week with Donald Trump on some of the Canadian problems, on some of the UK problems, on some of the global problems. The King was also there. And I think that it's an interesting story in the fact that both of them, who both have connections to Canada, but are not the government, or as the Prime Minister said, the person negotiating for Canada, but are doing this soft advocacy, both the King and Jamil Jivan, on behalf of the country. And whether or not
I just don't think that Jamil Jivan gets to be in the same ranks as the King.
He's definitely not.
It's Jamil Jivan.
Listen.
And he may think that but let's not forget that the only thing he accomplished in his last trip was to inspire a ton of Canadian backlash for describing the Canadian reaction to the trade war as an anti-American hissy fit. So Jamil Jivan has about as much credibility as like a snail heading down to Washington.
I would never ever compare anyone to the King, because as you know, I love him so much.
I know you love the monarch. I know.
My point is not Jamil himself, but just that it was somebody who wasn't the Prime Minister that was there. Yes, and whether or not
he should not be there,
right? So
Jamil Jivan,
exactly. So then, like, what is the King doing there? Also, if he talking about Canada, I don't know. It's a very weird situation that typically we would never see happen. Like, the Prime Minister would be down there.
Well, I think that the King is there for a number of things, and I don't think the sole purpose of his trip is to talk about Canada. But it's helpful if he does, it's not helpful.
Well, with a normal president, it would be helpful. I don't know if it's helpful when he goes down to talk to Donald Trump. Who knows?
Who knows? I think they also met with Sarah Jessica Parker. So
no, did they?
I think so.
Oh my God. What a mashup.
Really?
I mean, okay. So just all this to say, it's a very strange situation in terms of how do we get to that goalpost? How do we negotiate the best deal for Canada? Is this helping or hindering? And how do we make it stop if it's not helping? That's the thing. Like, the Prime Minister came out and talked about him being the only negotiator, but has he picked up the phone and said to Jamil Jivan, like, you got to stop. This is not helping. I think
they have said pretty publicly that Jamil Jivan should stop going rogue. I think that they've also said that they like the Team Canada approach, but they understand that even a small misstep can derail negotiations. You remember not that long ago when the Doug Ford ad,
exactly,
which may have been well-intentioned, but absolutely blew up the negotiations. So when members or other officials take it upon themselves to go rogue,
that's right,
they are risking the future of these trade negotiations on the backs of Canadians for their own public profile. Jamil Jivan is there for himself. Jamil Jivan is not there for Canadians. I think we all know that.
So what's the end goal then? Is he going to run for leader?
Don't you think so?
I don't know.
I'm going to go with a hard yes on that one.
What? Well,
but he's a polarizing figure. He's had his share of fallouts. So That would be interesting to see.
I
Watch out, Pierre. Here's a little tip from your liberal friend on Beyond a Ballot. Watch the knives.
Oh my God, what a time.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, hopefully it's all going to end in actual negotiations and we will see, something come out. That deadline is coming up. We have about a month left till they have to renegotiate this trade deal. So it is kind of getting to D-Day, and we'll see what.
Do you think it'll be done by July 1st?
Absolutely not. I do not.
Me either. I don't think so either. I think that's a fake. I think it's a fake deadline.
Well, the deadline is just that they have to renegotiate. Something has to start basically by that deadline. So I think deadlines are just words that Donald Trump hears. Like, I don't think he abides by them.
Exactly.
The problem is, like, how do you run an economy in a country with no deadlines and no understanding of like what's going to happen? I don't know. I'm having anxiety about it, but he's working with Mexico right now, and hopefully they get that done, and then we see something.
And then it's over to us.
Over to us.
Maybe the pipeline comments are
an indication,
or a favorable signal for our future negotiations.
Yes, exactly. That's how I took it, to be honest. That Trump's starting to think about, wait a second, those nice people up north actually have things that we do need. So maybe that argument that we've been making for a year is finally permeating the president's brain. Who knows?
That.
Yeah.
Love that for us.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to leave it there. A lot of economics this week, but I'm going to change the channel a little bit and dive into some monarchy talk with Bonnie Brownlee when we come back. Stay tuned. One of the things we talk about a lot on this show is trust. Trust in institutions, trust in information, and trust in the systems people rely on every day. In a digital world where scams can spread just as quickly as misinformation, protecting that trust matters. Fraudsters today are using increasingly sophisticated tactics, phishing texts, fake investment offers, and phone calls that sound surprisingly convincing. But there are some simple things that you can always count on. You can trust that your bank will never call, email, or text and ask for your password. You can trust that they will never ask for your PIN or one-time passcodes. And you can be certain they will never ask you to move your money to a so-called safe account. Those are classic warning signs of a scam. Canada's banks take fraud prevention seriously. They provide free tools and practical tips to help Canadians recognize the warning signs and collaborate with cross-sector partners from the Canadian Anti-Scam Coalition to help stop these criminals. Because Canada's banks are on your side. They know how hard people work for their money, and helping Canadians keep it safe matters. For all the essential information, visit cba.ca/scams. That's cba.ca/scams. I so rarely do this. A little end of the episode conversation without Amanda, but I had to bring in our good friend Bonnie Brownlee this week to talk about the King and Queen's visit to Washington to meet with President Trump. Because if there's anyone who can decode royal protocol and political theater, it's Bonnie. And Bonnie joins us now. Welcome.
Oh, I'm happy to be here.
So what happened during this visit?
Well, first of all, it happened. The king came. He decided that I'm going to come. I'm going to go through with this trip, and I'm going to come and see the American people, and I'm going to talk to President Trump. And I would have to say that he avoided any controversy. This was a master class in soft diplomacy. And I would say the emergence of King Charles as a new and different kind of global statesman. He has now stepped into it without causing any ripple effect. He kept it so quiet.
Okay, so one of the things that I was thinking when I saw that the king and queen were going to Washington, and the political climate in both Washington and globally, was, aren't the king and queen supposed to be apolitical? Like, is this them weighing in on the political stuff, or is this just a diplomatic visit?
For sure, it's diplomatic. They would not want to characterize it as political, but I think what you're seeing a little bit too is the modernization of the role of a monarch
Mm.
within turmoil times, and bringing a sense of sort of civility and calmness to the global conversation. And I think in many ways that's what King Charles was trying to do.
Hmm.
You know, we forget that he was the Prince of Wales for whatever 40 years, 45, but he didn't waste his time.
Right.
He was not just running around going to parties. He was learning, growing, listening, networking, learning languages, and staying up to speed every day on political issues, literally for the last 40 years. And he's always wanted to jump into it a little bit.
Hmm.
So this gave him basically the perfect opportunity to represent us as well, right?
Mhm.
He is our king. In going and having conversations and trying to make Trump and the world, understand that you don't have to be, essentially a bully to get things done.
Yeah, and I think that that is one of the big questions that I heard this week from a lot of Canadians was, I'm not traveling to the US. This is our king. Why would he go there and show the United States that he wants to be friends with them? I mean, we haven't seen Mark Carney go down there recently, and there's been no state dinner for Mark Carney. So, how are we as Canadians supposed to perceive our king being next to Trump?
Well, I think it depends if it matters to you
Hmm.
or not as well. But I mean, he was quietly pointed in what he was trying to get across, and he didn't duck any of the issues with Ukraine or talked about defense of the international order. He was there for a purpose, and
Mm.
he actually understood that his purpose was to try and bring people back to the table. And they didn't talk tariffs specifically, but they would have behind closed doors.
Yeah.
They would have talked about the UK and the Prime Minister and that relationship that needs to be mended
Hmm.
so that we can move forward. So I think the king went into this knowing exactly what he was doing. So for Canadians, I think we have to look at it as another avenue, another branch of a way to get into conversations with our dearest friends and neighbors and our biggest trading partner, the United States of America.
Do you think the king got on the plane to go home and called Mark Carney to let him know what he's learned?
He could have. He could
Because
have.
they're
They're
close
pals.
too, right?
Yeah.
They're friends.
Yeah. Oh, Charles has a big network, so he would have. It wouldn't surprise me. I have no idea if
Mm.
they spoke, but he would have probably called a few people. And I think the thing we really saw about him is his humor in
Yeah.
how he did the message to Congress and at the state dinner, where he had a little fun with it, but he was being very serious. And I've heard a lot of historians say there was nothing subtle about what King Charles just did for 4 days in the United States. It was choreographed, and it kind of went pretty perfectly for him.
Yeah, and you've talked to us before about the choreography that it
Mhm.
entails to plan
Yes.
these visits. Does 4 days seem like a long time to you? Because the last time when we were talking about him coming to Canada, I think that was like 48 hours. So when I
Yeah.
heard that he was with Trump for 4 days, I thought, wow, that is a lot of planning.
Yes, it is. But they went to New York and they went to Virginia. So they did sort of everyday American stuff,
Wow.
you know. So it was diplomacy versus the average person. And they went to the 9/11 memorial. He left a handwritten note, like things that actually matter on a global perspective
Hmm.
about loss and emotion. And as you know, military, he always will show up at anything with military, first responders, police, firemen. That's extremely important to the royal family.
Mm-hmm.
And they will always pay, a salute to that wherever they go.
So in Canada, and you touched on this briefly, but there are people that love the monarchy, like me, love, and then there are people that can't understand why we still have a king in this country. How do you think the king and the royal family as a whole plays into American culture?
I would say that what we witnessed is somebody with power and authority came in to the United States and tried to bring a sense of peace to all of us, to the wider world, to Americans and to Canadians. And so, whether we like him or not, or wonder what his role is, he's now redefined it to some extent, and he's now given himself a new identity for the remainder of his reign. So, I think we're going to see him skillfully step into a few more situations like this in the coming months and years. And we don't need to be grateful to the king. He lives a very good life. He doesn't, but he didn't run away from it. He didn't sit this one out, and he knows the concerns of Canada. He knows what we're worried about and what we're dealing with, and we're lucky in many ways that we have a prime minister that can pick up the phone, I assume, and call him. So I think we need to look for help in any way that we can find it right now in this turmoil. He didn't back away from what's going on with the Falklands.
Yeah.
Trump sort of picks a country, right, every couple of weeks about what he's going to do something with. But I think the king made that very clear. That's not happening.
It just seems like such a culture shock to juxtapose the royal family, the king, and Donald Trump. They just seem like, what do you think it would have been like to be a fly on the wall of their private conversations?
Oh, yeah. But Trump is the president of the United States.
Yeah.
So the king, you have to treat him with respect. And that's what they would do. And they would never think of doing it in any other way. They would just do it politely and correctly, hoping that they make some inways and make, some points and become influential. And that will basically be, what will be how we will judge the king is he influential in moving the dial on some of these major issues that were discussed subtly.
Do you think that that's a deviation from the way that his mother reigned, in that he's diving into more contemporary global issues than she did?
For sure. And she didn't reign very long in social media or 24-hour news cycles or TikTok and X and everything. So it was easier in many ways not to engage. And even for the king 10 years ago, the queen might not have come to do this trip. They would have determined that they should stay out of it, that they should just let it be.
Yes.
But I think he understands he's got a bigger role to play. And I think he is kind of redefining himself and stepping into his own, as a king, and paving the way a little bit for William, who's definitely going to have a different approach to diplomacy.
Yeah.
And where do you, the king actually needed to help. The world needs a bit of friendliness and kindness and thoughtfulness put into how we help other countries around the world and how we stay out of wars if possible.
And William, of course, at home celebrating his anniversary with Catherine. Did you wake up in the middle of the night and watch that wedding?
Yes, of course I did,
course.
because it was fun and it was champagne and you got to wear a crown.
What a ridiculous question. Of course you did. Okay.
I think I was covering it.
Oh, you were covering it. Were you there in England?
Yeah.
Oh my God. My dream. One day. A next career. I want to end though with William's brother, Harry, because Harry obviously living in the United States, the king being there for 4 days, multiple states, didn't meet reportedly with Harry. What message does that send?
I'm not, probably it wasn't the right place or time maybe to do it. Although I might have considered inviting him to the state dinner as a guest.
Yeah, that would have been nice. Yeah.
Camilla's son-in-law was there.
Oh.
Now they all get along. So they're not, her daughter's husband was there. I don't think the daughter was. That whole Harry thing, it's really too bad. And I was thinking, when the King was with the president, almost like when you're with Harry, everybody's careful what they say, even behind closed doors. Yeah. So I hope they can make something come together, but time will tell.
Time will tell, and we'll be watching. Thank you so much, Bonnie. You make all of my monarchist dreams come true. Appreciate you being here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
We'll be right back. Okay, if you've been waiting for a sign to invest in yourself, this is it. The W North Conference is back May 6th to 8th in Whistler, bringing together some of the most influential women in business, media, and leadership for 3 days of real connection and serious growth. We're talking powerhouse speakers, hands-on workshops, and the kind of networking that actually opens doors, not just swapping business cards. And yes, it's at the Four Seasons in Whistler, so it's giving leadership retreat and reset your energy vibes. As a Beyond a Ballot listener, you can use code BAB26 to get $200 off your in-person pass, or even grab a complimentary virtual access pass. Head to wnorthconnect.com and we'll see you in the mountains.
Thank you for listening. New episodes air every Friday.
Subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram and find us at beyondaballot.com.